Hello, beautiful souls. This is Jamie Goldstein, intuitive astrologer for the Bridging Sky and Earth Embody Your Star Wisdom Summit. And I am so delighted to be here with a dear sister, Damascena. She is a mythic archetypal astrologer among many other beautiful sacred offerings that she has. And she's going to be sharing on Venus's cycle and the Libra Star Point that will be coming up later this year. And her talk is called Venus as Sky Dancer, Libra Star Point. So just for anyone who's new to Damascena, Damascena is an archetypal astrologer, Ayurvedic wellness practitioner, and the facilitator of the transformative journey through the mandala of Venus wisdom called Sky Dancer. She is a passionate devotee of the ever-unfolding mystery. As an expert observer, a trait she developed as an only child, she regards herself as both a student of life and a decoder of the cosmos. Ooh, that is so juicy, Damascena. Well, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. And I would love to just start off with, can you share a little bit about the archetype of Venus and her cycle that she has?
Sure, absolutely. I brought slides, so if you'd like me to
Yeah,
bring the
beautiful.
audience in for a little introduction with Venus, that'd be great.
I love that. Yeah, let's see. We
Let me
can
see
pull them up.
this right. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Let's see. Yep, I can.
Who is Venus?
Yes.
Awesome. Great. Well, greetings, everyone. I'm so excited to be here to introduce you to Venus, a little bit about her cycle, and to talk about her Libra star point. And we'll get to what star points are in just a moment. I'm beginning with who Venus is. So from my perspective, Venus is both an astrological archetype and she is the feminine in general. So in astrology, she rules attraction, our values, beauty, aesthetics, how we resource ourselves, and all of our attachments, love, connection, union, art, music, our sensory perception, the way we savor and luxuriate in the moment and in our environment. Venus's action on the planet is to help us connect with our feminine essence, or like the feminine principle, or the force of that dimension of reality that is the feminine. When we're not talking about a gendered or personified lens, but her specific current. And we've all heard about like yin and yang, or the polarities, how there's a masculine force and a feminine force. And I see Venus as the action of the feminine force on the planet inside this dimension of reality. Hope that's clear. So Venus takes on two types of expression. When we get into looking at some of her astronomy, you'll understand that Venus takes on the expression of morning star and evening star. As morning star, she's Venus Pendemos. She's Venus of the people. She's embodied and full of power. She's fun. She could even be like a warrioress. And Venus Urania is Venus of the heavens. And so I hope the pictures display kind of the archetypal feel.
Oh, those are so great.
Yes. And I hope, and so I also see Venus as morning star, which she's morning star right now, currently, at the time of the summit, as being Venus of immanence, like the down and in, fully embodied, living life from the belly. And Venus evening star as being Venus of the heavens. She's more transcendent in her expression. She's looking to transcend mundane, sticky situations and to help bring us up and out into a more holistic understanding of things. She's graceful. So the astronomy of Venus's cycle, she creates this 5-starred pentagram. She is the second closest planet to the sun. Her orbit is between Earth and Mercury. So the Venus-Sun cycle is what we mean when we say the Venus synodic cycle. Venus begins at the interior conjunction. So she begins her cycle. If you can see can you see my mouse here?
Yes. Yeah.
So she began her cycle right here where this X is. She begins at the interior conjunction, or the conjunction closest to the Earth, when she's in retrograde. And she, in the sky, creates a loop, that's the retrograde loop, and she'll come up here. And I'll show you a little bit more. And then she creates this 5-petal pattern going around and around like this over 8 years. Each one of these petals takes 584 days to complete. So from Star Point to the next, oh, they don't have the next one on here. That's why I'm so like, where is it? From Star Point to Star Point takes 584 days. And then there's 584 day cycles, which creates the full Venus pentagram. So Venus's cycle is very old. It's been studied for a very long time. Even back in Sumer, on the ziggurats, they studied her cycle, and they didn't have space maps to study from. So the only way that they could study was from their position on Earth. They watched her in the sky. Of all the synodic cycles, and because of Venus's visibility to Earth, the Mayans, another culture who studied her very carefully, used her cycle to calibrate their calendars because it's so very predictable. After Venus completes her pentagram, she'll be very, very close to where she was at the beginning of her cycle. Most notably for us, the closest Venus myth or story is the story of Inanna. Inanna's story is a Venus sky story. I will make the slides available to everybody. I don't need to read through each and every one of them.
Oh,
so,
awesome. And we can get those out too.
Yes. Using the template of Inanna's myth to overlay onto Venus's sky story, we see Venus begin her journey right after her retrograde, very high in the sky, in the morning sky. And each month, Venus moves through, it would have been good if I read that last one for context, I guess. Sorry, I feel like I'm jumping forward. Let me go back just a sec, sorry.
Yeah, I know, you're perfect. I love this.
So the way that I approach this cycle is very much like the shamanic astrology mystery school approaches the cycle. And they are using the myth of Inanna overlaid on top of the Venus cycle. And so where the founder of shamanic astrology mystery school got his kind of way of understanding it was from a book written by Clive Hotsettler, who found a chalice in Saudi Arabia and spent years decoding all of the symbols on the chalice. And it ended up being Inanna's night sky story. And inside the chalice, it talked about how Venus moved down and created gateways with the moon. How every month when they met, it looked like the boat was carrying Venus through the sky. It's a really beautiful story. And
I love that imagery.
Isn't it gorgeous? And so I just wanted to add that little bit of context. And again, I'll give you the slides. So using the myth of Inanna, Inanna is the goddess who is said to have been called to the underworld. And when she heard the call, she had to, when she went to descend, she learned that she would have to travel through 7 gates in order to get down to her sister whom she was going to meet. And at each gateway, she was asked to remove one of what they call the me, or her royal vestments of power. And so when it comes to the Venus cycle, we see the first conjunction between the moon and Venus up at high in the morning sky as being the gate of the crown chakra. And so in Inanna's myth, she removes her literal crown. And so when we work with the Venus cycle, what we're doing is removing our metaphorical crown and working with the themes of the crown chakra. So the idea of how transcendence, or the kind of, sometimes the grift of transcendence, that there's a savior outside of us, how that has conditioned us to sometimes give our power away. We look at our, some of our beliefs. So each chakra on the way down is being looked at and kind of cleared. Each month, Venus, on her descent journey, she takes about 9 months to descend, will clear a chakra. So the following months, Venus will be a little bit lower in the sky, and we'll be looking at third eye chakra stuff. She then descends underneath the horizon. So she's under the earth. You can't see her anymore. And she spends 60 to 90 days, depending where you are on the earth, where she's not visible. She's on the far side of the sun. And then she does a very similar thing on her ascent journey, where when she begins to ascend, she's down in the root chakra of the earth. And I'm going to show you some slides that kind of will illustrate this just a little bit. So here's what a Venus moon conjunction looks like in the sky. It's not perfect, but just to give you an idea. And where we think the idea of chakras comes from is the kind of the belt here. When Venus is setting, and in the sunset, we see the chakra, the crown chakra, all the way down through the root chakra. You can get a lot of beautiful sunsets like that, where you're wondering, is that where they came up with the colors for the chakras, is inside the setting sun? Really beautiful. So, do you have any questions?
Oh, I think this is just all so beautiful so far. And hopefully they just started leaf blowers right outside my window. So hopefully there's not too much background noise from my end. I'm keeping myself muted when I'm not talking here.
I don't have any. I wanted to get through the Venus cycle stuff. I mean, there's still more to talk about with the Libra Star Point, but I just wanted to make sure that all made sense. I was trying to go quickly so we could get this piece out of the way. So if you
I love it. The context is amazing. And, I sync with the Venus cycle like you do. And every time I hear about it, it's almost like I'm hearing about it for the first time. Like it makes my heart so happy.
Do you feel like that was clear if you were just being introduced?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a beautiful introduction. And you tied the nice comparison to how Venus movement through the sky corresponds to the symbolic journey that we experience as well.
Okay, good. I have more information on my website that's written out. If somebody is really interested in the astronomical piece, they could always go there and look it up. It's very succinct and spelled out well with images. So if I skipped anything or anything needs clarification, there's information there.
Yeah, and we'll have your link right below. So if you're interested in finding out more, you can just go right to Damascena's website.
Great.
Well, so I love this. Thank you so much for grounding us into her 19-month cycle, these beautiful 584-day cycles, and then how across 5 cycles, how they weave the beautiful sacred geometry of the 5-pointed star or Venus's rose. Could you ground us in a little bit into this current cycle that we're in? And because we just started a new one in January of this year. It's the new Capricorn cycle. And so I'd love, your perspective on this Capricorn cycle. And then also, I know you have a lot of personal experience syncing with Venus as well. So I'd love to hear your personal experience with Venus too.
Yeah, I'm loving this cycle. I'm a Capricorn rising, so this feels very resonant for me to be in this sign, and I'm exploring more of myself, like really, really. We were just talking about it before this began. So when Venus's cycle starts in retrograde, she ends up spending about 4 months in one sign. So the planet is getting just showered with Venusian Capricornian energies right now. And it just magnified, and it gives us a time to really bask in what the overarching energy is from Capricorn. And with my way of working with her, then the Capricorn energies become the kind of like meta energies for the entire cycle. So even though we're going to talk about Libra Star Point, which will just add a layer of kind of nuance and help focus us more on our journey, really we're inside the Capricorn cycle. I see Capricorn as the dimension of reality that deep time is related to. And so that kind of like Capricorn itself is a sign ruled by Saturn, and it's up at the top of the zodiac. And in ancient times, or I don't even know how old this is, but there was this idea that the sign of Cancer, which is the home of the Great Mother, is the portal where souls come into this dimension at, and that Capricorn is the realm where they leave. And so Capricorn, in addition to all of its traditional significations, like being the sign that rules government and hierarchy and structure and all of that stuff. What else is Capricorn? Leadership, business. It's the midheaven, so it's what we're striving towards. It helps us achieve our goals, but it also has this really deep mystical side to it, and it's the place where our ancestors live. It's like that connection to the other world. Traditional astrologers just used the sun through Saturn, and they saw Saturn as kind of being the border between like the known tangible world and then the other, like the gateway to what we don't know that we don't know. It's a sign where wisdom is housed, real wisdom that's like the kind of wisdom that it's encoded in your DNA. If you got everything else out of the way, you could tap that wisdom really easily. And it goes back to like our ancestors in prehistory, that kind of wisdom. It's like the intuitive gnosis kind of wisdom. And in general, I think that pairs really well with Venus, because as the feminine is wisdom. So when we're looking at like what is the masculine in terms of traits, let's say like Jungian, or I'm not sure if this is Jung, but like it's alchemical, like traits. So we look at the masculine as being mind and consciousness and, intellect and focus, and the feminine as being wisdom and feeling and intuition and instinct. And it's the liminal realm versus the conscious known realm. It's the moon versus the sun. So that paired with Capricorn just gives us, I think, such an access point to remember or reclaim or innovate new portals or channels of wisdom that we maybe haven't had access to for a while. And it's so needed right now on the planet, considering everything that we're going through. I keep seeing, the news and the things happening and going, this is an absence of wisdom. Like really what's happening and how it's being approached is reactionary versus coming from a place of deep wisdom. So, yeah.
I love that. And I want to ask, as you're sharing all of this, do you have any tips on just even starting now where Venus is at in the cycle? Because we're still in that time period where Venus is still in Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
And as the summit's airing, Venus will switch from Capricorn to Aquarius. So it'll be kind of a big shift that we're experiencing right as the summit is going live here. Is there anything we can do at this kind of last little moment where Venus is in Capricorn, or maybe how to embrace the shift into Aquarius, this new shift in her cycle? Is there any advice you have on how can we connect with some of the remembrance, the ancient knowing, the knowing of the ancestors at the start of this cycle?
Yeah. So I tend to think, or I come from my own gnosis about Venus, is that anytime we are really in the present, so not leaning back in the past and fretting, or not kind of grabbing onto the future, that we are embodying her. She's a very in the present moment type of archetype. That she lives here, she makes love to the moment. That's her thing. She's always in wonderment with what's going on, what's happening, and if she's reacting, she's not reacting, she's responding from an instinctual place. And so what I've been doing myself is really trying to clear my channels. Like, I really do feel there's this strong opportunity for codes of wisdom to come down. I see Venus's entire mandala, or her cycle, as a mandala. So it's like a place to focus your psyche in general. And so as we're working this cycle, I know that with my students, we're working to just clear and empty. I think there's this way that we have spent so much time so full of information. I mean, it's just, even if we weren't having a pandemic, I mean, there's the constant influx of, social media, and just always being entertained. You can stream any show you want. I mean, how often are we in like a not white noise, but like a white environment that with very little stimulation? I mean, that's when wisdom, gnosis, comes through, is through being empty, being a kind of empty chalice, to be able to receive that. If you're constantly full and your mind is constantly full, there's nowhere for that kind of otherworldly or higher guidance to come in. You can read about it in a book if you want to, but that's Mercury, or that's mind. It's not Venusian. Venusian is emptying and then allowing yourself to be full, and that constant flow between emptying so you can fill, empty so you can fill. So, I mean, I think it sounds super simple. It doesn't sound like I'm saying that much or giving you that big of a practice, but it's a huge practice.
Oh, it's beautiful. And it's so perfect, because Capricorn is a very practical and pragmatic sign. But I also think you're speaking so beautifully too, because we do, like, as I'm sitting here, and hopefully it's not coming through, I think they're actually power washing right outside my window. And it's like the sound is like scrambling my brain. So I'm sitting here. But we have that. And just in general in our society, we're so inundated with noise and stimulation that it can take a lot of mindful intention to create those spaces where we can really empty so we can be filled again. And I think Capricorn has that connection with the impermanence of time, being ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is one of the planets, that is connected to death and transition, but also that's why that equally can make us really appreciate the impermanence of the present moment. And I think there's such a connection with honoring that impermanence of the moment with Capricorn. So I feel like it even amplifies what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And if this was something that somebody wanted to practice, I would begin doing it with 5 minutes. It is so much more difficult or more challenging than it sounds. Like, just sit with nothing on in your room by yourself. No noise, no stimulation for 5 minutes. It's a lot. Yeah.
I love it. It's perfect. And, is there anything you want to share about your own experience working with the Venus cycles or relating with the Venus cycles?
Well, this Venus cycle, we got COVID right at the our family did. So it came into my house right when retrograde started. So she was conjunct Pluto, which is a really important piece of this overall cycle. And then I finally got it at the end of December. So she went conjunct December 19th, or she went retrograde, conjunct Pluto the 19th, the 30th, I got it. And then as she was making her conjunction to the sun and seeding this new cycle in Capricorn, I was beginning to get better. So it was really interesting to have that full embodiment of that journey, that Venus underworld journey. COVID feels like a dark mistress herself. I mean, it just feels like you're dancing with the dark mistress. And so I think for me, what has been born out of that has been like this radical permission for my humanity. And we talked a little bit about that before this, but I don't think I've ever given myself so much permission to be human. And I want to carry this word. I was rescheduling things, canceling appointments, astrology appointments, and feeling guilty about it, and not being productive. I was so tired, and I kept shooting on myself about being productive, very Capricornian thing, you know? And so, yeah, I think that there is that balance with Capricorn, is that like, there's that voice of like pushing you on towards your goals, you know, like get it done, go after it. And then holding lightly in the balance that like, but we're human, and it's okay to make mistakes. I recently heard, I think it's maybe a Kobe Bryant quote, or Michael Jordan, someone will correct me, that says the reason he was able to win as much as he did and be as successful as he was because he failed more times than he won. And I thought that was a beautiful quote for Capricorn and Venus, because Venus is about being in the moment and being embodied, you know, so it's not about striving or reaching or gripping onto anything. And that being okay with failing, because you're giving your humanity full permission to breathe and just be what it is. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Radical permission to be human. That is so profound.
It is. It's a profound practice. It is.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, so as we'll kind of move along through the Venus cycle, is there anything you want to share about the morning star journey before she comes to the Libra Star Point?
I mean, the morning star has just a different energy in general. So we'll spend 9 months with Venus being more of a siren, and like a, you know, ready to pounce, and kind of in that more she's sorry. I don't want to equate her to a warrior. I don't think it's that. And so when I say warrioress, I think, you know, it's more of like how she responds dynamically, like in dynamic relation. And I think that she is like what we talked about, that like the imminence, she is like, she's moving from her belly. She comes from this hot place, you know, she's a little bit different than the like, evening star. I'm an evening star. So I don't have as much experience. Are you a morning star or an evening star?
I'm an evening star too. And I related so much to what you shared about the transcendence of Venus as evening star.
Yeah. Yeah. She is evening star, which will be, it's such a perfect symmetry, her being in Libra and beginning an evening star journey, because they're related. But yeah, morning star is just, she's kind of like the maiden, you know, like she's got that just a very like juicy hot energy. She's fiery, you know, and the evening star is more elegant and regal, and she's kind of like the god of the heavens, and she oversees from her beautiful place on the clouds with her harp, you know, energy archetypally I'm speaking. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. Well, Can you share some about the Libra Star Point that we'll be moving into this year, and what that is? Because you shared some about the interior conjunction being the star points that, you know, that initiate the cycle. What are the star points that are halfway through the cycle?
Yeah. So the Venus will go through her descent journey, which is her as morning star, and then she disappears underneath the horizon for 60 to 90 days. And when she does that in the sky, she's on the other side of the sun. And so there's this sense that we can't feel her, we can't reach her, she's not close. I really feel her absence when she's in the underworld. Not only can we not see her, so we're not being bathed in her light, but she's very far away. And then when she's exactly conjunct the sun, you know, everything is being consumed by the fire of the sun. And so the ancients began to call this period the underworld, which is exactly what it sounds like. She's under the horizon, so she's not part of the world right now. And this cycle was seated in Capricorn, very close to Pluto. And I think there's just a variety of things going on with Pluto in general. Like we're hitting the USA's Pluto return right now. We've been like leading up to that for the past 2 years. Pluto and Saturn are very connected to the pandemic, and this cycle is toned by Saturn, not just in Capricorn, but with Libra as well. And so there's this sense that that we're like in layers of the underworld. Like we still haven't come up to breathe from the Pluto Saturn conjunction of 2020. We're still kind of low in the underworld, all of us, and navigating this like liminal, upside down, disoriented journey of how do you approach the world in a pandemic. And then when Venus goes under the horizon for her underworld period with Libra, I think it's going to be another layer of underworld intensity. She does that when she is, sorry, I'm going to grab some astrology here. She does that when she's square to Pluto. So her star point in happens at 27. Sorry, I'm not finding it fast enough. I don't want to mess with the flow. Happens at 27 degrees, 29 degrees. It's 29 degrees, I think.
I think you're right. I think it's 29.
29 degrees of Libra. So she's square to Pluto. And so there's just this like Pluto Saturnian overtone for the entire length of the cycle, the entire 18 and a half months. And Pluto and Saturn are, they can be like the dark father, you know, and they have incredible gifts. And I want to talk a little bit about how we can approach those gifts at some point, maybe after we get through the astrology. But that's where the Libra Star Point happens. And so we are feeling a little out of touch with Venus. We're almost maybe feeling, because Libra is ruled by Venus, that the qualities that Libra holds are a little out of touch. And there's, you know, this feeling like we're not sure what's going on. Although Libra will tone the rest of the cycle after we emerge from the underworld. But I wanted to talk about what it's like to be in the underworld. The underworld is a place where we are like, it's a place where usually suddenly, and sometimes people will take themselves on spiritual journeys and put themselves in the underworld on purpose, but for the most part, it's suddenly and unexpected. You find yourself in like a dark and scary place, and all of your ego attachments and conditioning and your personal power feels like it's stripped from you. It's very disorienting, and you know, it's almost like being upside down. You don't recognize the world. And I think if we're all honest, we know what this place is. And unless you have a specific event in your life, it won't be this dark. but like mentally it can be, you know, like in our inner world, we can be going through turmoil um, or any of the things. And as Westerners, we're very conditioned to orient ourselves in an against pattern, like the hero fighting the dragon. You know, we're going to go into the underworld, we'll find the dragon down there, and then we're going to slay him. But from the lens of Venus and from the lens of the feminine, we're going to do something more like Aikido. So if you find yourself, this is great info, even if you're not at the Libra Star Point, right?
Oh, this is so good. I love this.
Any underworld kind of situation. Aikido is that kind of branch of martial arts that what it does is it uses the force of your aggressor or the momentum that they have to come at you to defend yourself. That's what it is. And so what Venus is doing is she's taking all of these underworld entities or currents of energy that are dark, and she's like making her body into food and allowing them to feast on her. There's this this way that she's dancing with, like in sync and in harmony, you know, like she's the undulating goddess, and so she's going to kind of like make love to the darkness versus then come up against it and try and fight it. When you think about like when you try to slay a dragon, usually dragons are immortal, so if you like try to cut its head off, you know, it'll grow a new head eventually and come back and mess with you. Or if so, that's like metaphorically speaking. So if you try to fight with your demons, or if you try to numb out or distract yourself or not deal with them or push them away and not pay attention to them, or develop like strategies that are more akin to soothing versus grounding. Do you feel the difference there? So they're going to come back, you know, this is a journey of transmutation. So we're changing one thing into something else completely. So by allowing the darkness or the underworld to feast on you, you know, to have a relationship with what's going on and not coming up against stance, you can transform the power that the underworld has over you, and it becomes an empowerment for yourself. Like you rise from this underworld place empowered, if that makes sense.
Oh, this is so powerful. And I was curious, do you kind of have the dates of when Venus is going to start going into the underworld this year?
Yeah, right. That would be handy.
I think is it August, September? I think that's kind of around the timing when she'll when she'll descend under the horizon.
Yeah, it's the end of August. The end of August, she dips below the horizon. And then it isn't until the end of November. No, hold on. You know, she's still about 8 degrees from the sun on November 22nd. So I think it's the very beginning of December that she on a chart rises. So the chart is different than what we actually see in the sky. So this is just paper. And so we're saying we think at about 10 degrees, she's visible all the time. But if you're at a low place on the earth, a lot of times you can see her within just a few degrees of separation. So it's more of a time period than a specific date. Because we're working with her cycle. We're working with her actual cycle, like the visible cycle, not what's written on a computer somewhere. Yeah.
I love that. And around that time of this year, do you have any guidance on, you know, how to plan our lives to kind of be in resonance with that energy?
Yes. So Libra is all the things that you think you know about her. So she is, you know, she has the scales, and she is love and relationships and partnerships and marriage and communing and co-joining and all of those things. If you were to Google what are the significations of Libra, you'd get a beautiful list like that. However, like a kind of deeper, more mystical way of working with Libra, and I think something that's worth mentioning is this word balance. I think that idea can be very distorted if you're not really understanding what balance means. Libra is the sign of balance, and that is her kind of mystical function on top of truth and beauty and justice and laws and all of her significations. But underneath that, her function is to navigate polarities or opposites, so you have light and dark, and where we get into trouble as humans is when we think that they're fixed and stagnant properties that need to be all light and all dark, and that's what balance means. Balance is more like it's the tension of opposites and how they move. It's kind of like walking on a jagged, rocky field of, or patch of beach where like the whole time you're trying to keep your balance. It's that like seeing and understanding that the principles of the 3D plane of this world are given to us all in duality, and that's how we learn. And so duality isn't right or wrong. It's something that just needs to be that we need to hold in dynamic tension. So it needs to be able to flow. And so I'm thinking perhaps we're going to see an exaggeration of opposites perhaps at that time. We've got a trine to Mars in there with the at the star point with Venus. So I think though we'll see the exaggeration in polarities or opposites, that we will begin to work with them in a more productive way. And I think that's what primarily her Libran part of her cycle, the evening star part, is going to be like, okay, how do we work it out? How do we work together? It's not about creating one thing. It's about allowing the two things to be fully expressed, but continue to be productive, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's so good. That's so juicy. And I love that because we do tend to think of Libra as balanced and like they're these static things, and they're not. And I was just getting the image of when I like stacking rocks, to make the herms. And it's like, you have to balance. And sometimes creating balance, things look very off balance to create the balance.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. I think that there are even like embodiment exercises that you can do in yoga, like, standing on one foot and holding your body in different poses. It's a really interesting internal exploration because you're feeling these different stabilizer muscles come online, and they're muscles that you don't normally use throughout your day. And so that's just like a great small embodiment exploration of like, how does Libra feel here? And Libra's Saturn's exalted in Libra. And so there's so many beautiful things. I could talk for like 2 hours on the kind of like Saturn, the sun and fall. We've got ruled by Venus, and like the kind of energetic that they make, like the Saturn Venus like highest expression is that they're very idealistic people. The sign pushes us towards, because the sun is in its fall there, and there's like we're beginning the fall and it's equinox, we're going into the dark part of the year. There's this kind of like striving for the light a little bit that I feel like, it's like the daisies trying to poke their head up one last time. And we can be super idealistic, which isn't very grounded. And we can forget that balance is dynamic. And that's where I think some of the like, I think of progressivism even as being a Libran, even though Saturn's there, right? I think of that as being kind of a Libran concept, not the actual, on the ground, mundane group of progressive people, but the kind of lofty ideas that progressivism holds. But I also think, and then they're very related to justice and rightness and fairness, and we can get a little lost if we're led only by morality all the time, yeah.
Oh, that's so good. And something that you sparked my interest that I would love to hear more about is when you were sharing about some of the gifts of the Plutonian, Saturnian kind of energy that we'll be experiencing this underworld.
Mm.
And because I think the last part of the underworld, Venus will be in Scorpio. Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I think when they're, well, on the chart, when they come apart, I think she's in the first degree of Sagittarius.
Okay, so she's made it
But
out there.
I doubt that's actually right. I don't think that's what's going to happen on the earth. So the gifts of the underworld are that empowerment. It is that idea of being like stripped of what and all of your conditionings, and you find yourself like in essence self, the most purest expression of who you are. And that's a huge empowerment. And so I see, Pluto in Capricorn. I mean, I started to have this vision of him in Capricorn, but I feel it throughout the whole cycle as that like archetype of the vulture, how the vultures go and feast on the carcass, but they do it in a way to return the what's left to the ground to be fertile soil, to be used again in a good way. And so I think of that action as having to do with us. I mean, there are a lot of old ways of being as a collective that we're going to have to lay to rest and bury if we're going to move forward and create a productive world. We have a huge opportunity to do that right now as we're beginning to emerge from the pandemic. But will we, will we take the gifts of Pluto, or will we come in that stance against him and slay him like a dragon, kick the can down the road, and not really get something productive rooted and planted in that fertile soil? And Saturn's always an ally. I mean, I know people think he's the Lord of Karma, so he kind of points us to the idea that what's happening now, this whole narrative and storyline playing out, is for our evolution. And he's kind of the guy that is calibrating us and pruning us and making sure that we stay on the path towards that evolution. I mean, that's what he wants to do. And in Libra, as his exaltation, he's kind of like the values of the high heart that in Egypt they had, and you'll get these on my slides because I have some mythology on my slides. They have that like idea of Maat being like the law, the cosmic law. And so they tried to rule their society by this very kind of like high value, I mean, really good quality values. And Saturn's like that. Like, he gives us the ability to refine what we really value. And I'm not talking like Taurus values where we're like, I value this for myself. I'm talking about like, the values that we want for ourselves and for the next generation. And, like, where are we going as a collective? What is non-negotiable? Where will we not yield? I mean, that's what Saturn's asking you. Like, do not yield. Like, if you have the value, don't yield. I mean, you can hold it in a specific way so that it's fluid, but like, for the sake of others or some external pressure, cancel culture comes into mind in some of these things. It's like that idea, if you really know yourself and you were acting from a quality valued place, society wants to kind of ask us to yield, because they didn't like something we did. And a lot of people I'm seeing are struggling to be able to stand in their power and their rightness when it's right, and just say, I'm not going to allow myself to be canceled even. I mean, this is a weird example. It just came to mind as we were talking.
Oh, it's so good. And it's so relevant.
Yeah. 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 It's so, I mean, I think that that's what we will begin to see. It's like a society that begins to actually grapple with like duality, maybe in a more skillful way. You know, we haven't had a Libra Star Point in the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School sees that there was a Libra Star Point just a few rotations ago. But depends which, in astrology, there's just a million different systems that you can use. And so in a way, everybody's right and no one's wrong kind of thing. But from Ariel Goodman's way of doing the star point, I believe there hasn't been a Libra star point since the 1800s. It's been in Scorpio, right? It's been hovering, right over the beginning of Scorpio. And so this is like a dynamic sea change for us as a collective to have any part of the cycle be Libran, toned by a relational goddess versus an underworld goddess. Mars, we've got Aries and Scorpio that have been showing up, and those are both Mars ruled signs. So I think it's going to be exciting to see what type of, and I know it sounds corny to say harmony, but what type of harmony she can create on the planet, especially when you've got people who are, fully embodied or working to be embodied in their feminine and to hold these qualities as emissaries of the feminine and hold the collective up and continue to amplify these qualities onto the planet. It's important.
Yeah. And it is really exciting because none of the other star points are in a Venus ruled sign. We don't have star points in Taurus with the way the geometry is working. So it is like this huge shift towards the feminine rebalancing with Venus going into that Libra star point, that first shift that we're experiencing, whether you kind of go with the last cycle, it was October 2019 or no, 2000, it was 18 when we had the
very end of the cycle was the coronavirus started. So I think you're right. It might have been 2018 that it began. That
because I remember that cycle. It was she met the sun in Scorpio, but she rose in Libra. So that is kind of like maybe the start of some of that Libra energy. It's one way to look at it. Mm-hmm. And I remember because literally days before, I think it was like 2 days before that star point, I had a very unexpected breakup in my life. And so I remember that cycle. So it is this huge shift that we're experiencing into this Libra energy because Venus has had star points in Mars ruled signs, Aries and it was Scorpio. And so I think it's something really exciting you're pointing to.
It is, but it's, I think also important to say that it's going to be a little bit subtle in the fact that like, this is a Capricorn star point overall. So the meta goddess or the overtone for this whole cycle is in Capricorn. We're just going to get that, like the refinement is going to be by Venus this time and not Mars. So that, and I think that's what that underworld coming up into the evening star portion of the journey is about one, yes, rising. So we're ascending and we're reclaiming because we've been on this underworld empowerment journey. But we're also refining, ourselves. And so we'll have Venus doing that work, which is exciting. And then I think the other thing that's just makes it even more potent is that a lot of astrologers view like the morning star Venus as being more like Taurus, the Venus you find in Taurus, and the evening star Venus being like the kind of expression of Libra. And so we're having an evening star cycle start in Libra. So they match. I think that energy will only potentize like the synthesis, like the matching. I don't know why I'm not finding the word I want, but
I feel the resonance of what you're sharing. Do you have any guidance on how we can embody all the star wisdom you've shared? You've shared some with us, some beautiful guidance. Is there anything else that's coming to mind?
Um, so I'm going to share a playlist that'll kind of be a Venus cycle journey playlist, and I'll share some instructions as the free gift. But I want to say, um, I see that Venus, I very much equate her, and I think I kind of said this at the beginning, of being the force of the feminine on the planet. And so anytime we are fully present and meeting the world with like wonderment. I mean, you can do that. You put a smile on your face, even if you're not feeling great, and decide to kind of like lighten your chest, kind of clear out your solar plexus a little bit, push the energy down into your solar plexus and into your root. Take a deep breath and kind of meet the world when you walk out the door with a sense of wonderment and curiosity. And this isn't a perfect match, but it's a good explanation, almost like beginner's mind. Like you're curious, you don't need to know. Needing to know is a conquering, it's a Mars action. It's wanting to like to have all the information ahead of time. And so even just that small shift in how you orient yourself to the world is a way to embody Venus. I mean, I know that again, these don't sound like full practices to sit down, but the like somatic embodiment practices can be very short. I mean, 10 seconds, and they can completely shift how you're orienting. And that's what
Oh, they're brilliant. I love what you're sharing.
Yeah, and that's what Venus is when you're syncing with her cycle, you're changing the way you orient yourself to the world. How you meet the world is different. It
And
just
things become less convoluted and less complex. Things, I mean, at least my personal experience is things become a lot more simple when I'm not spiraling in my mind, going down all these different the maze of my mind. I could just come into my body and listen to my body wisdom. It's like, oh, things in life become much simpler.
much simpler. And you feel there's this way that like I love the descent journey, because no matter how many times I do it, there's new external things that I'm clinging to that I think are giving me power, right?
Yeah.
And so that idea of orienting yourself the way you just spoke about is a way to almost immediately feel more empowered. And it's the authentic, organic kind of power that's not being sourced from something outside of you. It's very natural and yeah, and organic. It comes up, and it's kind of that idea of like, how does a woman know how to pull a soul into her body and give birth to it? Well, she doesn't know. Nobody knows. It just we do it. It just happens, and that's what you're talking about just now. Is that you don't know how something shifts, you don't know why it shifts. Getting the mind around it doesn't even matter. It's not important, but it does shifts. Yeah.
Oh, that's so, so good. And I think truly that's some of the best medicine of this time is to be really informed and guided by our body wisdom, our heart wisdom, which is Venus, like living more from essence than the linear mind. Cause I know myself, I get myself in all sorts of, I make things so much more complicated when I'm like up in the trying to know, up in the mind.
Me too. Well, and then I have Mars. So I have my sun is in Scorpio, my moon is in Aries, and then I'm a rising Capricorn rising where Mars is exalted. And so I have a very like conquering kind of spirit. Like
yeah, we're split of our sun and moon. I'm sun Aries, moon Scorpio, and then I have Mars and 3 other planets in Capricorn. So I kind of have that similar.
Yes. So this work has been so important for me because I was just oriented to the world in that like kind of power over not in like a cruel way, but like that's just how I approach things. It was like
Yeah.
if I wanted it, I needed to kind of conquer it to get it. I
Yeah,
couldn't.
like effort. And I mean, at least for me, the way I really is like efforting my way through and making it happen.
And instead with Venus, it's like it comes to you and you respond to it in this like dynamic dance.
Mhm.
It's sensational working with her. I
Yeah.
just I love her. She's my Dakini. Yeah, yeah, I love her.
I love that. I love that you're speaking because that's been one of my big shifts. And that's actually been one of my conscious things is I was so over dominant in my Mars with that Aries sun, Scorpio moon, Mars at 28 degrees Capricorn, which some say, in Hellenistic astrology, that's like the exalted degree of Capricorn. So I'm like
Ah,
so
yeah.
Martian. But I've learned how to approaching life instead of like, it's like even the summit, it's like, I'm going to do the summit. I'm going to effort my way through and I'm going to make it happen, to actually sit back, just put out the invitation, like to still be in action, but to be in action first from a place of being. It's like the action flows from a place of being. And
Mhm.
that's one of the biggest shifts I've noticed in my life, especially over the last 19-month Venus cycle, that like when I'm in action, it doesn't have to be so forceful and effortful. And it's like pushing up against energy constantly. It's like I can sit back and
Yeah.
in when I am in action, which is I kind of call Venus being, Mars doing. When I
Yes.
am doing, it's coming first. It's like rooted in being first. And that's
Mhm.
been one of my biggest like by like why I am such a big advocate of the Venus work because it's totally shifted because I was going to burn out. I
Yeah.
probably would not be here sitting today like holding space for this. And it's actually not doing, it's more of just holding space for the summit if I hadn't made that shift because I was going to burn out real quick.
Oh
And
yeah.
I
Yeah.
already burned out of another profession really quick. It's like that burnout is because I was in too Mars mode, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally get it. It's like we both have an iOS running system or something. You
Yeah.
understand what I mean. Yeah, and I ran hot all the time. And yeah, it's a huge shift. It's like with Mars, I feel like he is the external orientation. And that's beautiful and it's necessary. So it's not
Yeah.
like one is good, the other isn't. And Venus is that internal orientation. So you're coming from inside first, and that's the impetus for all of your action. And Mars is constantly like scanning the environment, and there's a lot of anticipation energy in Mars. I feel like he's always anticipating what's going to happen. And
Yep.
so you're always missing the present moment when you're in a constant state of anticipation. And that was me. Like I was, I don't know.
Oh, totally. Me too. It's like very vigilant and ready to act and ready to anticipate any issue that might arise, but it's being in that heightened adrenal state, that fight or flight. I mean, for me, that was my
Oh,
experience.
absolutely. Me too. It's vigilance. It's that, I'm armored. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I know for me, I was blocking off being able to receive a lot in my life because I was just, there was that Mars armor. And it was almost
Yeah.
like there was no space to receive. So I had to effort extra hard to essentially to get what I was wanting in life. And it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah. It's such an art, the art of reception. I mean, I get it. And from being so dominant in Mars, I definitely have the same thing where I'm, not sure. And that's another gift of Venus is like that, the ability to keep the body like a chalice and hold and receive, and be nourished, by other people, not just ourselves.
What a
It's,
beautiful visualization, perhaps, or a meditation, just
yes.
visualizing the body as a chalice.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been so rich and so juicy. And I love the invitation to, really lean into the underworld like you were sharing. And you shared something so profound that most of us only enter the underworld when we're dragged in by life. And understandably so. And with the Venus cycle, perhaps we can And of course, there may still be, in some sense, as much as we want to anticipate, we're still going to get dragged under. But perhaps I find when we willingly go in, as opposed to, right, let ourselves, as opposed to gripping, to the ground, gripping to the carpet, not going under, it can end up being the experience of going into the underworld, leaning in, like letting yourself go in, as opposed to gripping to the carpet, not wanting to go under. It can totally change the experience of the underworld, where the actual, and not to say that it will feel good, or, not to bypass or dismiss because that's part of it, is we feel everything. But it can be a more empowered experience when we kind of just willingly go in. Like the last underworld, I had some major relationships kind of go separate ways. And to know that know that we were in the Venus underworld was an opportunity to just, okay, like let it go, not resist it, not cling. It's like, let's go all in. Let's really experience what feels like loneliness, and let myself go inward, as opposed to clinging to these external relationships. And knowing that really supported me getting through that underworld experience.
Yeah, it's like orienting it towards it as divine timing.
Yeah.
That's very true. And Inanna herself in the myth willingly goes to the underworld. Like she's not dragged there. She hears that her sister, there's different versions of the myth, but her sister is going to give birth and she wants to go and visit her sister. And so she goes to the underworld willingly. In other versions, there's different stuff going on in the underworld, but in all versions, she goes willingly. Yeah.
And I think that points to kind of the difference versus, in our modern world, how we tend to relate to the underworld. And Venus gives us this map to, we can kind of willingly do it.
Yeah.
And I do find when we do, like, especially like, this is a little bit of an off topic, but Uranus is about, liberation. And when we resist, Uranus will shake us up to break us up, to wake us up. And I find if I start to feel that Uranian energy, just go with it, use my own free will to free myself, as opposed to forcing external life to do it. And I kind of feel like it's the same thing with the Venus cycle. We can just walk on in, and it gives us this template to approach to have a relationship with the underworld in a much more empowered way, when we're kind of willingly doing it. Every 19 months, we come back to that underworld phase, and it's like, okay, here's the time I'm going to do it. And then we may not get dragged under at other times in our life.
Yeah, but that's what you're speaking to, is that Aikido piece is just taking what's coming at you, and instead of resisting it, using the momentum of it to transmute or transform something, whether, the underworld is almost always about a severing. It can be like a real life severing, or it's a, mental or psychic kind of severing. But a lot of times there's an opportunity to transform. It doesn't always mean that you'll continue to be severed. And so, I think all of that like being, receiving the Aikido piece, those are all the recipes that make transmutation possible. Yeah.
That's like so juicy. Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. Do you have any offerings, anything going on that you want to share about with everyone?
Yeah. So on my website, my main offering is called Sky Dancer, and it is syncing with the Venus cycle. I was sick with COVID when the Venus cycle began, so I pushed back the start date to around Easter. So like that idea of resurrecting, and we're going to resurrect the feminine and in this journey. I see Venus like a little bit like the Dakini, and so she becomes a living guide versus just a planet or an archetype in the sky. She's much more dynamic than just Aphrodite. So it's not a journey that is about how you can become a better love goddess or anything like that. It's more shamanic in nature, where you're going to the underworld and shedding and then reclaiming more essence and empowerment on the way up. And so and then I have a private portal on my website that anyone can get free access to. It's got a bunch of introductory videos. So if this is something that anybody who's listening wants to deepen with, There's free stuff. I wanted to create that portal so that it was quality information for free, not just little tidbits or bites. So it's worth going and visiting that. And then I'll also have that like underworld journey for your guests, the descent and ascent playlist journey. And yeah, and there'll be some goodies for your audience. Oh, and I'm always available for readings as well.
Oh, beautiful. And we have your website right below this video and the free gift offering. So if you're watching, you can go click right on Damasena's website, click on the free gift so you can connect with her beautiful work. It's such a pleasure to have you here. You're a true treasure and you're such a beautiful wisdom keeper of the Venus energy, which is, one of the many reasons I was inspired to invite you here to the summit. And I can feel it from you. You not only share these beautiful transmissions, which you do, but you also embody Venus wisdom. I just, from what my observation of getting to know you, through our like online getting to know people journey, is that what I receive is that you really embody and you live this wisdom, which is, that's the Venus wisdom, right?
That's the path of gnosis with Venus. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and for putting the summit together for everybody. It's gorgeous. You're holding it so beautifully. I think it's going to be a huge value to everybody who it touches and reaches. So
oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you to be here, and thank you for sharing your wisdom. And thank you to everyone that's here watching. It's just such a treat to get to share space with you in this time. So if you're watching, I so look forward to seeing you in the other videos. We have so many videos filled with so many gems, so much juicy content coming through. So I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.